Oh, hi everyone. Hi. My name's Sarah, and I am really excited to share with you my practicum project, Building a Successful Future, the Financial Sustainability of Nonprofit Organizations. How many of you here work or have worked with a nonprofit? Wow, awesome. That's great. And for how many of you has that involved fundraising? Okay, all right. Well, just keep all that in mind. I'm really interested to hear about your experiences and how they kind of fit into what I'm going to go through and what I've been through in my project. So at the end, I just love to hear your input and just hear what you have to say. So before I start telling you about my project, I think I need to start with my story. And my story starts with my family. Now, I'm Italian, so that's not all of them. There's no way I'd be able to fit them on one slide. And also, Humpty Dumpty, not a family member, just for the record. He's just photobombing here. But my family has played a really huge role in where I am today, and they have instilled in me a passion for so many things. Hiking, the environment, dance, theater, music, reading, all of that has been such a huge part of my life. And so when I went to college, I knew that I wanted my journey to reflect that in some way, and I wanted to be a part of someone else's experience with these things. So when I went to college, I decided to major in fine and performing arts with a concentration in theater, and then more specifically costume design and construction. I had a lot of fun. I was able to do everything from steampunk casual to Greek daily wear, down there on the bottom, some Elizabethan dresses, theatrical makeup stuff, and I was even on stage a couple of times. And as part of my degree requirement, I had to take an introductory course to the business side of the arts world. And one day when we were talking about fundraising, my professor said to me, "None of this matters without the money." And that for me was a light bulb moment. I realized that I enjoyed costume designing and being a part of that world, but I wanted to make sure that these organizations were able to thrive in order to be around for other people to have the same experiences that I had had. So later that afternoon, after this class, I went down and changed my major to arts management. And after graduation and some work with nonprofit organizations, I realized that in order to do what I wanted to do and to make the impact I wanted to make, I was really going to have to get my master's degree. And what better place to do that than Antioch, which is a nonprofit organization that's very mission-driven, for me to learn about management and really get my arms around the subject matter. And when it came time to think about practicum, I wanted to work with a local organization whose mission I believed in that made a huge impact in the community in which I live. And I just happen to live in Keene now, so I asked the executive director of the Monadnock Conservancy, Ryan Owens, to sit down and have a conversation with me. And I wanted to hear about what their challenges were and what they were dealing with to see if I could use my project as a resource for them. And during that meeting, Ryan said to me, "Our biggest challenge is how do we make ourselves financially sustainable for the future?" And again, another light bulb moment. That was it for me. That was the connection of everything, my undergraduate work, my work here at Antioch, and where I saw my practicum project going. I really wanted to use my project as a way to answer that question and help the Conservancy. So through my research, I found that the key to nonprofit financial sustainability is fundraising, but successful fundraising. And there are three key themes that I felt that fit under that umbrella. And that's revenue, resources, and mission. Under revenue, I don't know if you can read that, but it kind of sums it up. It's really important to make sure that you have diverse revenue streams. So not just relying on grants or major donors or special events, but having all of those be a component of your fundraising. Because let's say something happens, like a major donor decides that their priorities have shifted and they no longer want to donate to your organization. If they take that away, you don't want to be left in the dark and left without any support. Another important piece is knowing that there are advantages and disadvantages to all fundraising strategies. So special events are great, and it's a great way to meet your donors face-to-face and engage with them and build relationships. But sometimes the resources used for these events can outweigh the revenue that you've earned. So you just want to be mindful of that as you're going forward. For resources, not so much monetary resources here, but more human resources, and then the resource of time, which is very, very important. And this kind of ties into the mission as well, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But you want to make sure that your volunteers and your staff are all working towards your fundraising goal, and that you have a timeline, a workable timeline that you can manage. And another really important piece is the board. And I want to talk about them separately just because they're so important in fundraising. If you have a board that doesn't financially support your organization, doesn't donate to your organization, when they reach out to their connections for fundraising purposes, people are going to say to them, well, if you don't support your organization, why should I do that? If you don't believe in them enough to support them, then why would I bother? And it's really important that your board is behind your mission, which again I'll talk about in the next slide. But all of these three key components really work independently but also interdependently. And the mission, these are just two great snapshots of organizations that really capture their mission in a few sentences. And mission is so important. It's the foundation upon which the organization is built. So you need to make sure when you're doing your fundraising that it's mission appropriate and it fits in with your goals as an organization. It's also really important to make sure, again, that all of your resources are behind your mission 100%. And not only are they behind it, but they understand what it is and what you're trying to do. So, at the end of my first semester of research, I felt that in order to really get my arms around this, I needed to do some practical application. And I reached out to our alum, Jenny, who's here. She's the philanthropy manager at the Monadnock Conservancy, and I shared my research with her, and I let her know that I wanted to do an internship, and I wanted to find a way to use my project to help them. And so we decided that I would take a look at the individual donor stream through the lens of fundraising and the three key components that I had there, revenue, resources, and mission, and take a look at their donor communication, their donor engagement, and their donor cultivation. So I came in at actually the perfect time. This is the West Hill property. This is land that the Conservancy is working to protect and is protecting. And I came in towards the end of this campaign where the question is, now what? We've raised these funds and we're in the process of protecting this land. What are we going to do? How are we going to engage with donors from this point moving forward? And just a little bit about West Hill. It's about 675 acres of land that run through Keene, Chesterfield, and Swansea, and it provides really vital habitat for wildlife in the area. So it's very important that this land has been protected. In this conversation with Jenny, she also let me know that they're kind of shifting their focus, especially in their communication, to being more donor-centric. So moving away from we, the Conservancy, to you, the donor. That, and they were moving away from more traditional forms of communication for them, which was a long letter. So I was charged with the communication piece of developing a way to say thank you to the donors using donor-centric language and also a non-traditional form of communication. So I've designed some postcards, and these are pictures from the property taken by Conservancy staff, and I put a quote on the front to kind of grab attention. And then underneath, it's really donor-centric language due to your generosity and support. And these cards are actually in the words or in the voice of the critters on the front, which I thought would be a really great way to kind of tie it all together. This is another example. And then this one here, if I can figure out the laser, just in case there's a donor who doesn't want a card from a critter, we have a landscape option. For the engagement piece, I developed a program to bring in the whole community as a way to say thank you for their support, because the West Hill Project would not have been successful without support from the community. And it's also, when thinking about the individual donor stream, a great way to meet donors face-to-face and build relationships, which is a really key part of fundraising. And for the engagement piece as well, I developed a piece of communication that follows along with those original guidelines. Again, it's a postcard, but a little bit bigger and longer just to make it different than the original ones. And picked the landscape. That was the most neutral, the most neutral image. And then again, using donor-centric language, saying we want to say thank you and for your support. The cultivation piece, for that I did some prospect research, aka professional stalking. That's using various database systems to look up donors and find out more about them, find out what their interests are they involved in their community, are there other nonprofits that they donate to kind of develop that relationship and make those bonds really strong. I think the great part about my internship was I got to be creative, but I also got to get into the really nitty-gritty of fundraising work. So how will I use this going forward? I think my key takeaway from all of this research was that everybody in a nonprofit is a fundraiser. It's not exclusive to department or individual or the board, it's everybody. And fundraising isn't always just asking for money. Fundraising is also developing relationships, getting to know the people in your community, getting to know the people your organization serves and what's important to them. And that for me is the real key takeaway. But also, I'm happy to share with all of you in a little over a week, I'll be starting a new job at NESI, the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association. And for me, it's kind of serendipitous because this job is really my practicum project and my work at Antioch have filtered into my work that I'm going to be doing with NESI. And it's perfectly aligned. And my project was really preparation for this work. And it's a really great feeling. So I want to say thank you, and I'd really love to hear your experiences, if any of this is familiar to you, unfamiliar, and questions. Any questions? Thank you.